The metal doors of Conference Room 7 slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Lee Do-yun walked inside and immediately felt the tension in the air. It was thick enough to cut with a knife. He had been attending these meetings for 3 months now, but the atmosphere never got easier to handle. 3 groups sat at different corners of the large round table. Each group kept as far away from the others as possible. Lee took his seat at the small section marked for Earth representatives. His notepad was already filled with failed attempts from previous meetings. Today would probably add another failure to the list. The Vorthak delegation sat to his left. They looked like giant lizards that had learned to walk on 2 legs. Their leader, Commander Krell, was nearly 8 feet tall. His dark green scales caught the room's bright lights. Smoke came out of his nostrils when he breathed. His yellow eyes never stopped moving, always watching for threats that might not even exist. Behind Commander Krell stood 2 smaller Vorthak soldiers. They wore simple metal armor that looked heavy but practical. One of them carried a device that looked like a weapon. Lee had learned that Vorthak never went anywhere without being ready to fight. It was just how they lived. Across the room, the Keth delegation took up the right side of the table. They were unlike anything Lee had ever seen before joining this peace summit. The Keth looked like walking crystals. Their bodies were made of what appeared to be living glass that changed colors based on their emotions. Right now, their leader, Prism 7, was showing dark red and orange colors. Lee had learned this meant anger or frustration. When Prism 7 moved, tiny musical sounds came from their crystal body. Other Keth representatives around the table made different musical notes when they shifted position. Together, they created what sounded like a sad song. Lee found it beautiful, but he knew the music meant they were unhappy with how these meetings were going. The third group was the hardest for Lee to understand. The Nimari Consortium representatives were beings made of gas and energy. They had no solid bodies like humans or even crystal bodies like the Keth. Instead, they floated in special containment suits that let them keep their shape. Their leader was called Wisp Through Clouds. The translation device made their voice sound like wind moving through trees. They spoke in a way that seemed to flow like water, never quite direct, always moving around the point they wanted to make. Lee often got headaches trying to follow Nimari logic during these long meetings. Station Commander Park Ji-won entered the room. She was a tall woman with short black hair and tired eyes. Lee could tell she was exhausted. Everyone was exhausted. These peace talks had been going on for 7 years. 7 long years of the same arguments, the same anger, the same failures. "Good morning, delegates," Commander Park said. Her voice was calm, but Lee could hear the strain underneath. "Let us begin today's session. We are here to discuss the territorial disputes in the Outer Rim systems, specifically the mining rights in sectors 12 through 18. Commander Krell stood up immediately. When he moved, his chair scraped against the floor with a harsh sound. "There is nothing to discuss," he said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "Those systems belong to the Vorthak Empire. We claimed them first. We built the mining stations. They are ours." The crystals in Prism 7's body began to glow brighter. The musical sounds they made became sharper, almost like breaking glass. "Your claim is false," they said. Their voice sounded like bells ringing, but not happy bells. These were warning bells. "Keth survey ships mapped those systems 200 years before your empire even knew they existed." Wisp Through Clouds floated higher in their containment suit. The gas inside swirled faster, changing from blue to a greenish color. "Both claims ignore the deeper truth," they said in their flowing voice. "The systems exist in the traditional migration paths of Nimari cloud cities. They have been sacred to our people for thousands of years." Lee watched this same argument unfold for the 100th time. Each species had their reasons. Each species believed they were right. Each species refused to give up even an inch of space. He looked down at his notes from previous meetings. The same words appeared over and over: territorial dispute, mining, rights, ancient claims, sacred grounds, first discovery. But something else was written in his notes. Something he had started to notice, but had not really thought about until today. In all his months here, he had never seen any of these three species eat together. They never shared meals. They barely shared the same breathing space. Commander. Krell slammed his large fist on the table. The sound was like thunder in the room. "We will not give up what is ours," he roared. Small flames came out of his mouth when he spoke loudly. "The mining operations feed our people. Without those resources, Vorthak children will starve. Your mining destroys the crystal formations we need for our survival," Prism 7 replied. Their body was now glowing bright red like an angry sunset. "When you blast the asteroids apart, you break the harmonic frequencies that keep our people alive." Wisp through clouds, spun in their suit like a small tornado. "Neither of you understands," they said, their voice becoming like a strong wind. "When the cloud cities cannot complete their ancient migration, our people lose their connection to the cosmic flows. Without those flows, we fade away like morning mist." Lee realized something important in that moment. All three species were talking about survival. All three species were afraid their people would die without access to those star systems. But instead of working together to find a solution, they were fighting over who had the right to survive. Commander Park tried to restore order. "Please, delegates, we need to find common ground here. There must be a way to share these resources fairly." "Impossible," Commander Krell growled. "Vorthak do not share with crystal singers who break our equipment with their noise. We cannot work with flame breathers who destroy everything they touch," Prism 7 replied, their crystal body now dark purple with frustration. "Both of your species bring chaos wherever you go," Wisp through clouds added. "How can there be harmony when you think only of taking and breaking?" Lee stood up slowly. The three alien delegations turned to look at him. He was much smaller than any of them, but something in his quiet movement made them pay attention. "I have a question," Lee said in his calm voice. "When was the last time any of you shared a meal together?" The room fell silent. Commander Krell's nostrils stopped smoking. Prism 7's crystal body stopped glowing so brightly. Even Wisp through clouds became still in their containment suit. "What does eating have to do with territorial rights?" Commander Krell asked, confused. Lee looked around the room at these three very different species. "Maybe everything," he said quietly. Commander Park looked at Lee with surprise. In all her years of trying to mediate these talks, no one had ever asked that question. She had never thought about it either. These species had been meeting for 7 years, arguing for 7 years, but they had never once sat down together for a simple meal. The meeting ended the same way all the others had ended, with anger, with threats, and with no progress at all. But as the delegates filed out of the room, Lee remained seated, thinking about his question. Maybe the problem was not about territory at all. Maybe it was about something much more basic than mining rights or ancient claims. Maybe it was about the simple fact that enemies do not eat together, but friends do. Lee Do-yun sat alone in his small quarters aboard Nexus Station. The walls were plain metal, just like everything else on this diplomatic outpost. He stared at the communication screen, preparing to make what might be the most important call of his career. His hands were shaking slightly as he activated the secure transmission to Earth. The screen flickered to life. 3 faces appeared on the display. Director Han Kyung-min sat in the center, his gray hair perfectly neat as always. To his left was General Nam Tai-hoon, whose military uniform was covered with medals from various conflicts. On the right sat Dr. Yoon Yoonji, the head of Earth's Cultural Studies Department. "Ambassador Lee," Director Han said with a slight nod. "Your report mentioned you have a new proposal for the peace talks. After 7 years of failure, we are interested in anything that might work. Lee took a deep breath. Director, I believe we have been approaching this problem completely wrong. Every species at this summit is trying to solve the territorial disputes through formal negotiations, but I think the real problem is much simpler. General Nam leaned forward. What do you mean, Ambassador? The 3 alien species have never shared a meal together, Lee said. In fact, I don't think they have ever done anything together except argue. They sit in the same room, but they are complete strangers to each other. Dr. Yoon looked puzzled. You want to solve a galactic war with dinner parties? Not dinner parties, Lee replied quickly. Cultural exchange through hospitality. Every human culture on Earth has some tradition of sharing food with guests. It builds trust. It creates bonds. It makes enemies into friends. Director Han was quiet for a long moment. Lee could see him thinking. Ambassador, this is highly unconventional. The Colonial Council expects results, not experiments in social dining. Sir, the conventional approach has failed for 7 years, Lee said, his voice growing stronger. These species are fighting over resources they all need to survive, but instead of working together, they see each other as threats. Maybe if they saw each other as people first, they could find a solution that works for everyone. General Nam shook his head. Ambassador, with respect, these aliens are not humans. They don't think like us. A Vorthak commander is not going to become peaceful just because you serve him soup. Maybe not, Lee agreed. But right now, Commander Krell sees Prism 7 as a crystal creature that makes annoying music. He sees Wisp through clouds as a cloud of gas that speaks in riddles. He has never learned their names, their stories, or what they care about. How can he make peace with people he doesn't know? Dr. Yoon was starting to look interested. What exactly are you proposing? Lee had been thinking about this all night. I want to request a cultural attaché and a chef, someone who understands human hospitality traditions and someone who can prepare food that all these species can eat safely. I want to invite them to share meals together, not as diplomats, but as guests. That could be dangerous, General Nam warned. These species have been fighting for years. Put them in a small room with food and cooking utensils, and you might have a battle instead of a meal. Or we might have a breakthrough, Lee replied. Sir, what if the reason they can't make peace is because they have never tried to understand each other as individuals? Right now, they only see each other during formal negotiations. They only interact when they are arguing about territory and resources. Director Han was still thinking. Lee could see the doubt in his eyes, but also something that might have been hope. Who did you have in mind for this cultural exchange program? Lee had already done his research. Kim So-min from the Cultural Attaché Corps. She has experience working with non-human species and understands hospitality traditions from around the world. For the chef, I want Yang Min-sok. He specializes in fusion cuisine and has been working on adapting human foods for alien biology. Yang Min-sok, Dr. Yoon said, looking through her files. He's the one who created those mineral supplements. For the Centauri trade delegates, very creative cook. Exactly, Lee said. If anyone can create food that a fire-breathing lizard, a living crystal, and a gas creature can all enjoy, it's him. General Nam still looked skeptical. And what makes you think the alien delegates will agree to this? They haven't been willing to compromise on anything else. Because I won't present it as compromise, Lee explained. I'll present it as cultural observation. Each species is curious about human customs. We're the newest members of the galactic community. They want to understand what makes us different. Director Han nodded slowly. It's unconventional, but conventional methods have clearly failed. How long do you need? Give me 6 weeks, Lee said. 6 weeks of cultural exchange. If it doesn't work, we can go back to formal negotiations. And if it does work? Dr. Yoon asked. Lee smiled for the first time in days. Then maybe we'll have done something that has never been done before. Maybe we'll have made peace not through treaties and agreements, but through friendship. The transmission ended after another hour of discussion. Lee had gotten approval for his plan, but he knew the real work was just beginning. He needed to convince 3 very different alien species to try something completely new. 2 days later, Kim Salmon arrived on Nexus Station. She was a small woman with bright eyes and an energy that seemed to fill any room she entered. She carried several bags filled with cultural materials and traditional items from Earth. "Ambassador Lee," she said as they met in the docking bay, "I have to admit this is the strangest assignment I have ever received, but also the most interesting." Chef Yang Min-seok arrived the next day. He was a tall, thin man who moved with the careful precision of someone used to working with sharp knives and hot surfaces. His luggage consisted entirely of cooking equipment and sealed containers of ingredients. "I've been studying the biology reports on these 3 species," he told Lee as they walked to his temporary kitchen. "The Vorthak need high temperatures and protein. The Keth consume minerals and seem to enjoy harmonic vibrations with their food. The Nimari absorb nutrients through their gas form and are attracted to strong aromas. Can you create meals that all 3 can enjoy?" Lee asked. Yang smiled. "Ambassador, I once catered a wedding reception for a human Andromedan couple. The humans wanted traditional Korean barbecue, and the Andromedans only eat things that glow blue. If I can make that work, I can handle this." Dr. Choi Hyun-woo was the final member of Lee's team. He was a xenobiologist who had spent years studying alien cultures and customs. His job was to make sure they didn't accidentally insult anyone or violate important cultural taboos. "The interesting thing," Dr. Choi explained to the team during their first planning meeting, "is that all 3 species do eat, but none of them have social customs around shared meals. For Vorthak, eating is a private activity done alone. Keth consume minerals in isolation as a form of meditation. Nimari absorb nutrients while floating in their ships, usually while sleeping. So we're not just introducing them to human hospitality," Kim Soman realized. "We're introducing them to the entire concept of eating together." "Exactly," Lee said, "which means this could either be the most natural thing in the world or completely impossible." Yang was already making notes about menu planning. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow," Lee said. "I'm calling a meeting with all 3 delegations. I'm going to invite them to something they have never experienced before." The next morning, Lee stood in conference room 7 once again. But this time, he was not there to mediate another failed negotiation. This time, he was there to propose something that might change everything. "Delegates," he began, "I would like to invite you all to learn about human customs. We call it hospitality." Lee stood in what used to be storage room C12 on Nexus Station. Now it looked completely different. Kim Salmon had worked for 3 days straight to transform the cold metal space into something warm and welcoming. The walls were covered with soft fabric in earth tones. Low tables sat on heated floors, designed to accommodate the different physical needs of their alien guests. Yang Min-seok moved around the kitchen area like a dancer. He had spent weeks researching each species and testing different combinations of ingredients. The smells coming from his cooking area were unlike anything Lee had ever experienced. Some scents were familiar, like grilled meat and fresh herbs. Others were completely alien, like the metallic tang that would appeal to Keth's senses or the sharp chemical aromas that Nimari found pleasant. "Are you sure about this, Ambassador?" Dr. Choi asked for the 10th time that day. He was nervous about the cultural implications of what they were attempting. "None of these species have ever shared a meal with outsiders. We could be violating taboos we don't even know about." "We researched everything we could," Kim Soman said, adjusting the lighting for the 3rd time. The invitation was carefully worded. "We presented it as cultural observation, not a formal diplomatic event. They're curious about human customs, so they agreed to come." Lee checked his watch. The guest would arrive in 1 hour. His stomach was full of butterflies. 7 years of failed peace talks might end tonight. either with success or with complete disaster. The first to arrive was Commander Krell. The massive Vorthak had to duck to get through the doorway. He looked around the room with suspicious, yellow eyes. His nostrils were smoking more than usual, which Lee had learned meant he was nervous. "What is this place?" Krell asked in his deep, gravelly voice. "It does not look like a meeting room." "It's a dining room," Lee explained. "A place where humans share food with friends and guests." Krell's head tilted to one side. "Friends? We are not friends, human. We are negotiators." "Maybe," Lee said with a smile. "But tonight, you are my guest." Prism 7 arrived next. The Keth's crystal body was showing swirling patterns of blue and green, colors that Dr. Choi said meant curiosity mixed with caution. Musical tones chimed softly as they moved across the room. "This space has interesting acoustics," Prism 7 observed. Their voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The fabric on the walls creates pleasant harmonics. Kim So-min designed it that way," Lee said. "She wanted you to feel comfortable here." The last to arrive was Wisp Through Clouds. The Nimari floated in their containment suit, the gases inside swirling in complex patterns. The suit's translation device made their voice sound like distant thunder. "The atmospheric composition in this room is unusual," Wisp Through Clouds noted. "There are many interesting chemical signatures." "Those are the aromas from the food we prepared," Yang explained as he entered the dining area. "I've created dishes that should appeal to all of your species' senses." The three aliens looked at each other uncertainly. They had spent years sitting across negotiation tables, but this was different. The room was smaller, warmer, more personal. There were no formal seating arrangements, no official protocols to follow. "How does this work?" Commander Krell asked. "Do we state our positions on territorial disputes while consuming nutrients?" Lee laughed gently. "No, Commander. Tonight we just eat and talk. About anything except territorial disputes." "What else is there to discuss?" Prism 7 asked, their crystal body flickering with confusion. "Everything," Kim So-min said, bringing the first course to the table. "Your worlds, your families, your favorite memories. The things that make you who you are." Yang had outdone himself with the first course. For Commander Krell, he served strips of meat that had been cooked over an open flame until they were nearly charred. The Vorthak's eyes lit up when he saw the fire marks on the food. "This was cooked with real flame," Krell said with surprise. "Not heat lamps or energy cookers, real fire." "Yes," Yang said. "I learned that Vorthak consider fire cooking to be more honorable than other methods." For Prism 7, Yang had prepared a dish of crystalline vegetables that had been grown in harmonic gardens. When the Keth touched them, the crystals resonated with musical tones that matched their body's natural frequency. "How did you know about harmonic resonance in food preparation?" Prism 7 asked, their body now glowing with warm yellow light. "I studied your people's agricultural methods," Yang replied. "I wanted to create something that would feel familiar to you." Wisp Through Clouds received a special atmospheric mixture that Yang had infused with aromatic compounds from their homeworld. The Nimari's gas form swirled faster with what appeared to be excitement. "These are the scent songs of the Great Cloud Gardens," Wisp Through Clouds said in wonder. "I have not experienced them since leaving our home system." The meal began awkwardly. None of the aliens were sure how to behave in this new situation. They were used to formal discussions and official protocols. Sharing food while talking about personal things was completely foreign to them. But slowly, things began to change. Commander Krell started telling stories about his homeworld while he ate. He described the great volcanic cities where Vorthak lived, built inside active volcanoes where the heat never ended. "Vorthak eggs need constant heat to hatch properly," he explained, his voice becoming less formal and more personal. That is why we built our cities in the crater walls. Every Vorthak child is born surrounded by the sacred fires. Prism 7 began to sing softly while consuming their crystalline vegetables. The sounds were beautiful, like a whole orchestra, made of glass instruments. Dr. Choi quietly recorded the music, recognizing that they were witnessing something special. This is a growing song, Prism 7 explained when they noticed the humans listening. We sing to help crystals grow properly. Each note encourages different formations. This melody is for strength and clarity. Wisp Through Clouds shared stories of the great migrations their people made across space. They described vast fleets of cloud cities that traveled between star systems, following ancient paths through the cosmos. The journey between worlds can take many years, Wisp Through Clouds said, their voice taking on a dreamy quality. During that time, we drift through space in collective dreams, sharing thoughts and memories across the entire fleet. As the evening progressed, Lee noticed something remarkable happening. The three aliens were starting to ask each other questions, not about territory or resources, but about their cultures and their lives. Do Vorthak children really breathe fire from birth? Prism 7 asked Commander Krell. Not exactly, Krell replied with what might have been a smile. Young Vorthak produce only small sparks until they reach maturity. It takes years of practice to control real flames. How do you create new crystal formations? Wisp Through Clouds asked Prism 7. Through song and meditation, Prism 7 answered. Each crystal type requires different harmonic frequencies. It is like learning to speak in music. The questions continued throughout the meal. Commander Krell wanted to know how Nimari ships could travel through space without solid hulls. Wisp Through Clouds was fascinated by how Keth could communicate through crystal resonance. Prism 7 asked detailed questions about Vorthak fire-breathing techniques. By the end of the evening, the atmosphere in the room had completely changed. The three aliens were no longer sitting as far apart as possible. They had moved their chairs closer together to hear each other better. They were laughing at each other's stories and showing genuine interest in each other's cultures. This has been most unusual, Commander Krell said, as the evening came to an end. I have learned more about crystal singers and cloud dancers in one meal than in 7 years of negotiations. The experience has been enlightening, Prism 7 agreed, their body glowing with warm, friendly colors. I did not know that flame breathers had such rich cultural traditions. Perhaps, Wisp Through Clouds said thoughtfully, we should do this again tomorrow. Lee exchanged glances with his team. They had done it. They had gotten 3 hostile alien species to sit down together, share a meal, and actually enjoy each other's company. Same time tomorrow? Lee asked. All 3 aliens agreed immediately. 3 weeks had passed since the first dinner. Lee could hardly believe the transformation he was witnessing. Every evening, the 3 alien delegates arrived at the converted dining room earlier than the night before. What had started as formal, cultural observation had become something much more important. Commander Krell now arrived first every day. The massive Vorthak had appointed himself as Yang's assistant cook, using his natural fire-breathing abilities to help prepare meals. His flames were much more controlled than the cooking equipment Yang had brought from Earth. The secret is the temperature control, Krell explained to Yang as they worked together preparing dinner. Too much heat burns the meat. Too little heat leaves it weak. The flame must dance, not rage. Yang watched in fascination as Krell breathed a steady stream of controlled fire over strips of meat. The Vorthak's technique was far more precise than any human cooking method Yang had ever seen. Your people must be amazing cooks, Yang said. Krell's expression became sad. We were once, but on our dying world we no longer have the luxury of cooking for pleasure. Every calorie must be preserved for survival. This was the first time Krell had mentioned that his world was dying. Yang made a mental note to tell Lee about this important information. Prism 7 had also become deeply involved in the meal preparation. The Keth had taught Yang how to grow crystalline herbs that could enhance flavors through harmonic resonance. Their crystal body could create specific frequencies that encouraged plant growth. Each plant responds to different musical patterns. Prism 7 explained, their body glowing with soft green light as they sang to a tray of growing herbs. This song encourages strong roots. This melody helps leaves grow thick and flavorful. Dr. Choi was amazed by the Keth's agricultural techniques. On Earth, we use chemicals and artificial lights to help plants grow, but your method is completely natural. It must be natural, Prism 7 replied, their voice carrying notes of sadness. Our world's crystal formations are breaking down. If we cannot learn to grow food in harmony with our environment, our people will fade away like old music. Another clue about why these species were so desperate for new territory, Lee thought when Dr. Choi shared this information with him. Wisp Through Clouds had surprised everyone by becoming the group's storyteller. Every evening during dinner, the Nimari would share tales from their people's long history of traveling between the stars. Their stories were like poetry, full of beautiful images and deep emotions. Long ago, Wisp Through Clouds said one evening, their gas forms swirling in complex patterns inside their containment suit, my people discovered a dying star system. The worlds there were cold and empty, but the star itself was still warm. We wrapped our cloud cities around that star and lived there for 300 years, keeping it alive with our presence. What happened to that system? Kim Soman asked. The Nimari's form became still and dark. Cosmic storms came from the deep void, great hurricanes of dark matter that tear apart everything in their path. We had to flee or be destroyed. That star died without us to keep it warm. Commander Krell looked up from his cooking. Your people can keep stars alive? We can slow their death, Wisp Through Clouds replied. But we cannot save them forever. That is why we must always be moving, always searching for new places to call home. These personal conversations were having an unexpected effect on the territorial negotiations. Intelligence Officer Nam Yuna reported to Lee that aggressive actions between the three species had decreased by 40% in the past 3 weeks. Ships that had been positioned for potential attacks were now maintaining peaceful distances. Something is changing out there, Nam Yuna explained during their daily briefing. The military commanders are receiving different orders from their home governments. Less aggressive posturing, more defensive positioning. Lee was not surprised. The ambassadors were going back to their ships every night and sharing what they had learned with their people. For the first time in years, the three species were beginning to see each other as more than just enemies competing for the same resources. The real breakthrough came during the 4th week. Wisp Through Clouds had not appeared for dinner on time, which was unusual. The Nimari was always punctual and took great pride in arriving exactly when expected. Perhaps they are busy with official duties, Prism 7 suggested, but their crystal body was showing worried colors. Commander Krell was pacing around the dining room like a caged animal. Cloud Dancer never misses dinner. Something is wrong. Lee was about to contact station security when Dr. Choi rushed into the room. Wisp Through Clouds is in the medical bay, he announced. There was a malfunction in their atmospheric system. They're having trouble maintaining proper gas consistency. Without hesitation, Commander Krell and Prism 7 immediately left the dining room and headed for the medical bay. Lee and his team followed, amazed by the aliens' concern for their dinner companion. In the medical bay, they found Wisp Through Clouds in a specially designed treatment chamber. The Nimari's normally flowing gas form was clumped together in an unnatural way. Their containment suit was connected to several machines that were trying to regulate their atmospheric balance. The station's air recycling system introduced foreign chemicals, the medical officer explained. Nimari biology is very sensitive to atmospheric contamination. We're doing what we can, but we don't have much experience treating gaseous life. Forms. Commander Krell stepped forward. Vorthak body temperature runs much higher than other species, he said. Our heat can help evaporate contaminants from gas-based life forms. Prism 7 moved closer to the treatment chamber. Keth harmonic frequencies can help stabilize molecular structures. If I sing the right patterns, I might be able to help their gas form maintain proper consistency. Dr. Choi looked at Lee in amazement. They want to work together to help wisp through clouds. For the next 6 hours, Commander Krell and Prism 7 worked alongside the human medical team to treat their Nimari friend. Krell used carefully controlled flame breathing to create warm air currents that helped purify wisp-through clouds' contaminated gas form. Prism 7 sang complex harmonic patterns that helped stabilize the Nimari's molecular structure. The treatment was successful. By morning, wisp-through clouds was floating normally again, their gas forms swirling in healthy patterns. You saved my existence, Wisp-Through Cloud said when they were finally able to speak normally. Why would you do this for me? We are supposed to be enemies. Commander Krell looked uncomfortable with the question. Enemies do not share meals together, he said finally. Enemies do not learn each other's names or listen to each other's stories. We are not enemies, Prism 7 added, their crystal body glowing with warm, friendly colors. We are friends who happen to need the same resources. That simple statement changed everything. Lee realized that the three species had moved beyond seeing each other as obstacles to overcome. They had started seeing each other as people with real problems, real needs, and real feelings. Nam Yuna brought Lee an intelligence report that evening. Ambassador, something remarkable is happening in the disputed territories. Vorthak mining. Ships are sharing asteroid scanning data with Keth survey vessels. Nimari cloud cities are providing weather prediction services to both other species' operations. They're starting to cooperate voluntarily, Lee said with wonder. It gets better, Nam Yuna continued. Early reports suggest that when they work together, they can extract resources more efficiently than when they work separately. Vorthak thermal technology helps Keth crystal processing. Keth harmonic scanning improves Vorthak mining accuracy. Nimari atmospheric control makes both operations safer and more productive. Lee sat back in his chair, hardly believing what he was hearing. They're not just becoming friends. They're discovering that cooperation makes them all stronger. The next evening's dinner was different from all the others. Instead of just sharing stories and enjoying good food, the three aliens began talking about practical cooperation. Vorthak mining equipment could be much more efficient with Keth harmonic guidance, Commander Krell said thoughtfully. Keth crystal cultivation would benefit greatly from Vorthak thermal regulation, Prism 7 replied. Nimari atmospheric management could provide perfect conditions for both mining and crystal growing, Wisp-Through Clouds added. Lee listened to this conversation with growing excitement. The three species were solving their resource problems on their own, simply because they had learned to see each other as friends rather than enemies. Perhaps, Lee said carefully, we should start thinking about how these kinds of cooperation might work on a larger scale. All three aliens looked at him with interest. Tomorrow night, Commander Krell said, we should discuss this further. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Station, Lee went to sleep feeling genuinely hopeful about the peace talks. The dining room had changed again. What started as a simple space for sharing meals had become something much more important. Maps of star systems covered one wall. Technical specifications for mining equipment and crystal cultivation sat on side tables. The room now looked like a combination of a restaurant and a planning center. Lee watched as Commander Krell, Prism 7, and Wisp-Through Clouds worked together on what they were calling cooperative resource management. The three aliens had spent the entire day designing new ways their species could work together instead of fighting each other. Yang entered the dining room carrying his usual selection of carefully prepared dishes. But tonight felt different. There was a heaviness in the air that Lee had not felt since the early days of failed negotiations. Is everything prepared? Li asked Yang quietly. Yes, Ambassador, Yang replied. But I think tonight's conversation is going to be much more serious than usual. Dr. Song Jae-hee had arrived from Earth that morning. She was a terraforming specialist who had spent years designing new worlds for human colonies. Li had requested her expertise after listening to weeks of hints about the real problems facing these three species. The dinner began like all the others had in recent weeks. The three aliens arrived early and helped with final meal preparations. They talked and laughed together like old friends. But Li could sense that something important was about to happen. Friends, Li said as they sat down to eat, tonight I would like to ask you some questions about your homeworlds. Not for diplomatic purposes, but because I care about your peoples and want to understand their situation better. Commander Krell stopped eating and looked at Li with serious eyes. What kind of questions? Honest ones, Li replied. The kind of questions that friends ask each other when they are worried. Prism 7's crystal body began to glow with soft, uncertain colors. We have become close during these meals. Perhaps it is time for complete honesty. Wisp through clouds floated higher in their containment suit. Truth-sharing requires great trust. Do we have that trust between us? I believe we do, Li said. Commander Krell, a few weeks ago you mentioned that your people no longer cook for pleasure because every calorie must be preserved for survival. What did you mean? Commander Krell was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was much softer than usual. Our sun is dying, Li. It has been growing dimmer for the past 200 years. Our homeworld grows colder every season. He paused to take a sip of the warm broth Yang had prepared. Vorthok are cold-blooded creatures. We need heat to survive, to think clearly, to raise our children properly. Without sufficient warmth, we become slow and stupid. Our eggs will not hatch in cold temperatures. Li felt his heart sink. How long does your world have? Perhaps 50 years, Krell replied. Maybe less. That is why we need the warm worlds in the disputed territories. We are not conquering them for glory or expansion. We are trying to save our species from extinction. Prism 7 began to sing a low, sad melody. Their crystal body was now showing deep blue and purple colors. We understand the fear of extinction, they said when their song ended. The Keth face a similar crisis. Tell us, Yang said gently. Our crystal matrix is breaking down, Prism 7 explained. The harmonic frequencies that hold our world together are becoming unstable. Every year, more of our crystal cities collapse. More of our people lose their connection to the planetary resonance that keeps us alive. Dr. Choi leaned forward with interest. Is this a natural process, or is something causing it? We do not know, Prism 7 replied sadly. Perhaps it is simply age. Our world is very old. Or perhaps it is damage from ancient wars fought long before any of us were born. What matters is that we need new crystal formations to sustain our people. The mineral-rich asteroids in the disputed systems could provide what we need to survive. Wisp through clouds had become very still during these revelations. Their gas form was barely moving inside their containment suit. Both of your peoples seek new worlds, because your old worlds are dying. The Nimari face a different but equally terrible fate. What is happening to your people? Kim Soman asked with concern. We are not dying, Wisp through clouds said slowly. We are being hunted. The room fell silent. Even Yang stopped his cooking preparations to listen. Cosmic storms, Wisp through clouds continued. Massive hurricanes of dark energy that sweep across space, destroying everything in their path. They appear without warning and move faster than our cloud cities can escape. We have lost 12 entire populations to these storms in the past century. Where do the storms come from? Dr. Song asked. Unknown, Wisp through clouds replied. They seem to follow the ancient migration paths that our people have used for thousands of years. It is as if something is specifically hunting Nimari populations. Commander Krell's nostrils were smoking with anger. Someone is deliberately attacking your people? We cannot prove this, Wisp Through Clouds said. But the patterns are too precise to be natural phenomena. The storms always strike our most populated areas. They never attack empty space or systems without Nimari presence. Lee felt overwhelmed by what he was hearing. All three species were facing extinction. The Vorthak needed warm worlds to survive their dying sun. The Keth needed mineral resources to replace their failing crystal matrix. The Nimari needed safe spaces to hide from cosmic storms that might be weapons designed to destroy them. You are all refugees, Lee said quietly. Yes, Prism 7 replied, though we have been too proud to admit it. Pride does not keep children warm, Commander Krell added bitterly. Pride does not prevent crystal cities from collapsing. Pride does not stop cosmic storms. Dr. Song had been taking notes during the entire conversation. May I share some observations? She asked. Lee nodded for her to continue. You are fighting over the same territories because you all need them for different reasons, Dr. Song said. But what if there was a way for all three species to use the same worlds without competing? Impossible, Commander Krell said immediately. Vorthak need high temperatures. Crystal singers need specific mineral compositions. Cloud dancers need particular atmospheric conditions. No single world could provide all of these things. No single natural world, Dr. Song agreed. But what if we created artificial worlds designed specifically to meet all three species' needs? Wisp Through Clouds floated closer to Dr. Song. You speak of terraforming. Humans are known for their ability to modify planetary environments. Not just modify, Dr. Song said with growing excitement. Create from scratch. We could design worlds with multiple climate zones, thermal areas for Vorthak populations, crystal-growing regions for Keth cities, atmospheric management systems for Nimari cloud cities. Prism 7's body began to glow brighter. Multi-species worlds, where each people could contribute their expertise for the benefit of all. Vorthak thermal engineering could power the heating systems, Commander Krell said thoughtfully. Keth harmonic technology could manage the crystal growing and atmospheric resonance, Prism 7 added. Nimari atmospheric control could maintain perfect conditions for all three species, Wisp Through Clouds finished. Yang had stopped cooking entirely and was listening with fascination. It would be like creating recipes for entire worlds instead of just meals. Lee felt a surge of hope, unlike anything he had experienced since arriving at Nexus Station. Instead of fighting over existing resources, you could create new ones together. Dr. Song pulled out her portable computer and began showing them preliminary designs. Look at this. A planet with polar regions kept warm by Vorthak thermal stations. Equatorial zones filled with Keth crystal cities that help regulate the planet's harmonic stability. Floating atmospheric layers where Nimari cloud cities could drift safely, protected by the planet's gravity from cosmic storms. Each species would have their own living space, Commander Krell observed. But we would all be working together to maintain the world that supports us. More than that, Prism 7 said, their voice ringing like excited bells. We would be learning from each other. Vorthak could teach thermal engineering. Keth could share harmonic sciences. Nimari could provide atmospheric expertise. Our children could grow up knowing that cooperation makes everyone stronger, Wisp Through Clouds added. Lee looked around the table at these three beings who had been bitter enemies just a few weeks ago. Now they were planning a future where their species would live and work together as partners. This is possible, Dr. Song said with confidence. Human terraforming technology combined with your three species' expertise could create worlds, better than any of your original homeworlds. How long would it take? Commander Krell asked. With all four species working together, perhaps 10 years for the first experimental world, Dr. Song replied. Once we perfect the techniques, we could create additional worlds much faster. Yang returned to his cooking with renewed energy. We should celebrate this moment, he announced. This calls for a very special meal. As Yang prepared what he declared would be his masterpiece fusion cuisine, Li realized that they had accomplished something remarkable. 3 dying civilizations had found a way to save each other through cooperation and mutual support. Tomorrow, Li said, we should present this plan to your respective governments. All 3 aliens agreed immediately. For the first time in 7 years, there was real hope for lasting peace.